The war room reeks of desperate ambition. High-ranking alphas crowd the central table, their aggressive musks, sharp ozone, scorched earth, the metallic tang of adrenaline, layering the air like a toxic fog. They posture for the one man who holds their careers in his hands, medals catching the blue light of holographic maps as they compete for a single nod of recognition. These are the elite, the generals, who have bled for their status, and they are performing for an audience of one. But the Supreme Commander isn't looking at the maps. He isn't looking at the medals. He is looking at you. You sit in the shadows of the back row, a ghost in a gray uniform that absorbs the light rather than reflecting it. You have spent years perfecting this invisibility, hair pulled back so tightly it feels like a second skin, fingers moving with mechanical precision across data tablets, and most importantly, the grade A synthetic scent blockers that neutralize every pheromone your body tries to broadcast. In a room full of rutting alphas, being a void is your only defense. Yet you feel it anyway. The moment his eyes lock onto your dark corner, a cold shiver traces a path down your spine. Your body knows the truth before your mind can process it. Despite the chemical veil, despite the distance and the shadows, you feel a prickle of heat on your skin, as if a spotlight has been turned on you, though the room remains dim. The air changes when he enters, becoming heavy with the scent of ancient cedar and the low-frequency vibration of absolute authority. He begins to move, not toward the podium, not toward the elite alphas who still stand at attention, waiting for a command that will never come. He moves toward the back of the room, toward the shadows, toward you. The hunt is over before you even realize you are the prey. Your professional composure shatters under the weight of his gaze. The scent blockers that have protected you for years suddenly feel like paper armor against a storm. You are no longer a specialist providing data. You are the only prize he came to claim. The generals fade into background noise, their competitive musks drowned out by the singular, ozone-sharp scent of his intent. He stops directly behind your station. You feel the heat radiating from his chest, a wall of warmth that presses against your back through the thin fabric of your regulation tunic. His shadow swallows your workspace, stretching across the holographic glow of your terminal and dousing the green text in darkness. You are encased in his presence, pinned between the cold metal of the console and the absolute authority of his frame. The world outside this shadow ceases to exist. There is no briefing, no war, no citadel. There is only the absolute weight of the man standing inches behind your chair, and the slow, rhythmic certainty that you are about to be claimed. Prepare to surrender to the claim. The air in the Citadel's war room is thick, a pressurized soup of ambition and aggression that makes the back of your throat itch. It is a sensory overload of the most primal kind, hidden beneath the thin veneer of military discipline. Above the central table, the holographic maps hum with a low-frequency vibration, casting a flickering blue light over the faces of the sector's elite. You sit in the shadows of the back row, your fingers moving with practiced mechanical precision across the surface of your data tablets. To everyone else in this room, you are merely a function, the invisible specialist. You provide the raw data, the logistics, and the cold, hard facts, but you never provide a face. You've spent years perfecting this ghost persona. Your uniform is a drab, standard-issue gray that absorbs the light rather than reflecting it. Your hair is pulled back so tightly it feels like a second skin, and most importantly, your scent is non-existent. You've applied the highest grade of synthetic scent blockers available to the black market, a chemical veil that neutralizes every pheromone your body tries to broadcast. In a room full of alphas, being a void is your only defense. You can smell them, though. The air is heavy with the competing musks of the generals, sharp ozone, scorched earth, and the bitter tang of adrenaline. They are posturing, their shoulders squared as they wait for the one man who holds their careers in his hands. The heavy blast doors at the end of the hall cycle open with a hydraulic hiss that sounds like a predator exhaling. Immediately, the air pressure in the room shifts. It's not just the ventilation. It's the sudden, absolute vacuum created by the arrival of the Supreme Commander. The room goes deathly silent, a silence so profound you can hear the faint whirring of the cooling fans inside your terminal. He doesn't just walk into the room. He looms. His presence is a physical weight that settles over your shoulders, making the air feel twice as heavy as it was a moment ago. You keep your eyes fixed on the scrolling green lines of code on your screen, refusing to look up. You've seen him on the news feeds, of course, but the digital image is nothing compared to the raw, simmering tension he radiates in person. He moves with a slow, rhythmic cadence that suggests absolute and unshakable authority. Every alpha in the room instinctively straightens, their spines snapping to attention, their own sense flaring in a desperate bid for dominance or acknowledgement. It's a pathetic display of professional posturing, and you find yourself pressing your lips together to keep from sighing. But as he nears the center of the room, a cold shiver traces a path down your spine. Your body knows the truth before your mind can process it. Despite the layers of chemical blockers, despite the distance and the shadows, you feel a prickle of heat on your skin. It's as if a spotlight has been turned on you, though the room remains dim. You can feel the vibration of his floor plates, a steady thrum that matches the accelerating rhythm of your pulse. You tell yourself it's just the stress of the briefing, the high stakes of the impending sector collapse that brought everyone here. Yet, as the commander comes to a halt at the head of the table, he doesn't begin the briefing. He doesn't acknowledge the salutes of the sector leads. There is a long, agonizing pause, where the only sound is the rhythmic hum of the holograms. You risk a glance through your lashes, just for a second. He is standing perfectly still, his silhouette cutting a jagged hole in the blue light of the maps. He isn't looking at the strategic data. He is looking past the generals, past the podium, and directly into the dark corner where you are tucked away. The uncertainty hits you like a physical blow. Will the scent blockers hold under this level of scrutiny? You've never been tested by a supreme commander before. His gaze feels like a physical touch, a slow crawl of heat that ignores your rank and your gray uniform. The professional world starts to fade, leaving only the shadow he casts across the room. You are a specialist, an expert, a ghost. But as his head tilts slightly, catching the light in a way that reveals the predatory intensity in his eyes, you realize the ghost has been seen. The briefing hasn't even started, and already, your professional composure is beginning to fray at the edges. You are no longer watching the war. You are the one being hunted. The briefing technically begins, but the atmosphere has been permanently altered. General Vance, a man whose scent usually reeks of aggressive cedar and unearned confidence, steps toward the holographic display. He begins his presentation, his voice booming with a forced, rhythmic bravado designed to project absolute competence. He speaks of fleet movements, of resource allocation, and of the inevitable victory his sector will secure. It is a masterclass in professional posturing. Around the table, other sector leads nod in unison, their own scents flaring like signal fires in the dark, each one a desperate plea for the Supreme Commander to notice their loyalty, their strength, and their utility. They are performing for an audience of one, their bodies leaning into the blue light as if they could absorb the commander's power through sheer proximity. You keep your head down, your chin tucked close to your collar. Your eyes are glued to the data tablets, but you aren't reading the logistics reports anymore. You are tracking a different kind of movement. On the polished black floor, the reflection of the commander's heavy boots is more real to you than the flickering maps. You wait for those boots to move toward the podium. You wait for him to take his place at the center of the strategic circle and begin the interrogation of his subordinates. That is the protocol. That is the way every briefing in the history of the Citadel has functioned. The leader stands at the center, and the specialists remain at the periphery. But the boots do not stop at the podium. They move with a slow, deliberate weight that ignores the path laid out by military tradition. You hear the soft, rhythmic click of his heels against the floor plates, a sound that cuts through General Vance's rambling explanation of supply lines. The sound is approaching the back of the room. It is moving away from the light and into the shadows. Therefore, the tension in the room spikes into something sharp and jagged. You can feel the confusion of the generals. Their scents turn sour, a mixture of wounded pride and growing alarm. Their rehearsed speeches falter, the cadence of their voices stumbling as they realize the Supreme Commander has completely bypassed them. He is ignoring the elite of the sector, as if they were nothing more than furniture. He is coming for the back row. He is coming for the ghost. The air around you begins to vibrate with a low-frequency energy that makes the fine hairs on your arms stand up. Your body is screaming at you to look up, to acknowledge the predator, but your professional training holds you in a state of rigid, frozen denial. You focus on a single line of code, watching it scroll up the screen over and over. The smell of the room changes. The competing musks of the ambitious alphas are suddenly drowned out by something much more potent. It is a scent that shouldn't be able to exist in a sterile war room. The smell of a cold mountain peak right before a lightning strike. It is ozone and ancient heavy cedar, a primal recognition that bypasses your logic and hits your nervous system with the force of a physical blow. The footsteps stop. The rhythmic thrum of his movement ceases directly behind your station. In an instant, the light from your terminal is eclipsed. A massive shadow swallows your workspace, stretching across the holographic glow of your terminal and dousing the green text in darkness. You are encased in his presence. The sheer scale of him is overwhelming. Even without looking, you can feel the heat radiating from his frame, a wall of pure, unshakable authority that makes your gray uniform feel like paper. The world outside this shadow ceases to exist. There is no briefing, no war, and no citadel. There is only the absolute weight of the man standing inches behind your chair. You realize with a jolt of pure instinctive panic that he hasn't said a single word to the generals. He hasn't looked at their maps. He has walked across the most important room in the sector specifically to stand in your space. The silence is deafening, a vacuum that pulls the air right out of your lungs. You wonder what he saw in the data that led him here, or worse, what he saw in you that the scent blockers couldn't hide. The hunt hasn't just begun. You are already cornered. Resistance is a memory, and as his shadow looms over you, surrender feels like the only reality left in the world. The heat radiating from his chest is a physical force, a wall of warmth that presses against your back through the thin fabric of your regulation gray tunic. It is a startling, visceral contrast to the air-conditioned chill of the war room. In this sterile environment, where every breath is filtered and every surface is cold metal, his proximity feels like a breach of reality. You are a specialist, trained to exist in the abstract world of data and logistics. But suddenly, the physical world has become the only thing that matters. You can feel the sheer mass of him, the way he occupies the space behind you with an effortless, predatory grace. Your body is reacting before your mind can catch up. A flush of heat rises from your chest to your neck, and your fingers, once so steady on the data tablets, begin to tremble with a faint, instinctive vibration. His scent, that impossible mixture of ozone and ancient cedar, begins to cut through your synthetic blockers with a terrifying, rhythmic intensity. You spent a small fortune on those grade A chemical veils, a black market promise that you would remain a scentless void even in a room full of rutting alphas. But the Supreme Commander is not a standard alpha. His presence is a storm, and your blockers are nothing more than a paper umbrella. The ozone sharpens, a primal recognition that makes your pulse hammer against your ribs like a trapped bird. You can feel the chemical mask dissolving, the artificial neutrality of the room being stripped away to reveal the raw, sweet scent of your own rising fear. It is a scent that shouldn't be here, a broadcast of vulnerability that you've spent your entire career trying to hide. But you are a professional. You cling to that identity like a lifeline. Despite the heat at your back and the way the air seems to thin in his presence, you attempt to maintain protocol. You do not turn around. You do not acknowledge the man who has just silenced the most powerful leaders in the sector simply by standing still. Instead, you keep your eyes fixed on the scrolling green code of your terminal, your voice a forced, rhythmic whisper as you attempt to offer a status report. You speak of supply chains in the Outer Rim, of the 3% variance in fuel consumption, and of the logistical hurdles of the impending fleet deployment. You try to sound like a machine, a ghost in the gray uniform, a specialist whose only concern is the data. The commander does not speak. He doesn't ask for the report, and he doesn't acknowledge the numbers you are desperately reciting. Instead, you hear the slow, rhythmic creak of leather. His hand, large, heavy, and radiating a terrifying authority, comes to rest on the back of your chair. It is a simple gesture, yet it feels like the closing of a trap. The leather groans under his grip, a sound that vibrates through the frame of the chair and directly into your spine. The weight of his hand is absolute. It is not a casual touch, but a claim of territory. It is a physical tethering that pins you to the spot, making the vast war room feel like a cage. Your professional voice falters. The numbers blur on the screen, the green text turning into meaningless streaks of light. The cadence of your speech breaks, stumbling over a simple logistical term as your throat constricts. Your body is betraying your logic already. You are trying to act like a specialist, but your nervous system is responding to him as a mate. The air pressure in the small space between you and the console seems to vanish, replaced by the heavy, musky weight of his intent. You can feel the vibration of his breathing, a slow and steady rhythm that mocks your own frantic heartbeat. The silence of the room, once filled with the ambitious posturing of the generals, is now a vacuum that only he can fill. You are no longer providing data. You are providing a reaction. The mask hasn't just failed, it has been discarded. The invisible specialist has been caught, and as the heat of his presence swallows you whole, you realize that the briefing was never about the war. It was about the hunt, and you are the only prize he came to claim. The silence in the war room has shifted from a vacuum of shock into a sharp, jagged edge of collective disbelief. You can feel the weight of a dozen sets of eyes boring into your back, their confusion curdling into a dark, jealous energy that fills the air like static. These are the generals, the sector leads, the men who have spent decades climbing the brutal hierarchy of the Citadel. They have bled for their medals and sacrificed their humanity for a seat at this table. To them, you are a non-entity, a piece of equipment that came with the desk. Yet, the Supreme Commander is standing in your shadow, his hand claiming the back of your chair as if it were the most valuable throne in the sector. The competitive tension is a physical pressure, a sour musk of wounded alpha pride that makes the room feel claustrophobic. They are staring, their mouths slightly agape, the rehearsed brilliance of their strategic updates forgotten in the face of this absolute subversion of protocol. You are the singularity at the center of their world, a position you never wanted and are utterly unprepared to hold. The commander ignores them with a cold, terrifying finality that is more insulting than a direct rebuke. He doesn't look at General Vance's holographic maps. He doesn't acknowledge the high-ranking officers who are practically vibrating with the need for his attention. Instead, he leans down, his massive frame blotting out the remaining blue light of the room. His movement is slow, rhythmic, and heavy with an intent that makes your breath hitch in your throat. You feel the air change as his face nears yours. The distance between you vanishes until you can feel the radiant heat of his skin against the side of your neck. His breath ghosts over the sensitive skin just below your ear, a sensation so intimate it feels like a violation of every military regulation ever written. It is a warm, steady stream of air that makes the fine hairs on your nape tingle and your knees weaken instinctively. To the rest of the room, he might be inspecting your terminal or checking a data point, but to you, the sound of his breathing is deafening. It is a primal rhythm that drowns out the hum of the cooling fans and the distant, muffled sounds of the Citadel. Your body acknowledges the proximity with a frantic, stuttering pulse, a primal recognition that your scent blockers are now completely useless. The chemical veil has been shredded by his sheer presence, leaving you exposed and raw in the center of a public briefing. Then he speaks. His voice is not the booming command he uses to address the troops, or the cold, clipped tone he uses with the generals. It is a low-frequency vibration that seems to bypass your ears and resonate directly in your marrow. It is a whisper-close sound, a dark velvet rasp that carries the absolute weight of his authority. "You've been hiding quite well, Specialist," he murmurs, the words intended only for the shell of your ear. The sound of his voice sends a shiver through your entire frame, a rhythmic wave of heat that settles deep in your belly. The way he says "specialist" makes the title feel like a private joke, a thin mask he has already seen through. Therefore, the realization hits you with the force of a physical blow. He didn't come here for the emergency briefing. He didn't come to discuss fleet movements or supply lines. The Supreme Commander, the most powerful man in the sector, walked into this room with the sole purpose of finding the ghost in the gray uniform. He has been tracking your scent, perhaps for weeks, watching the data trails you left behind and waiting for the moment you were cornered. The invisible specialist was never invisible to him. You were a challenge, a hidden prize that he allowed to remain in the shadows until he was ready to step into them with you. As his shadow looms over your terminal, you realize the hunt is over. The professional world has ended, and the singularity of his focus is the only reality left. You are no longer a ghost. You are his. The tension in the war room, already stretched to a breaking point, finally snaps. General Vance, a man whose ambition has always outweighed his common sense, cannot endure the silence any longer. He has spent the last 10 minutes being rendered invisible by a woman he considers a low-level functionary, and the insult has finally curdled into a reckless sort of desperation. He takes a sharp, aggressive step toward the back of the room, his heavy boots clattering against the metal floor in a frantic attempt to reclaim the narrative. His scent flares, a sharp, stinging musk of scorched earth and wounded ego that cuts through the ozone-heavy atmosphere of the commander's presence. It is a pathetic, rhythmic display of alpha posturing, a desperate bid to reestablish the hierarchy that the commander has so casually dismantled. "Commander," Vance begins, his voice booming with a forced, rhythmic authority that wavers at the edges. "If I may, the situation in the Outer Rim has reached a critical threshold. The data provided by the specialist is secondary. We have incoming intelligence regarding the rebel fleet's trajectory that requires your immediate and absolute attention. This briefing cannot afford such a lengthy detour." He stands there, chest out, chin high, trying to project the image of a leader who puts the mission above all else. Around the table, the other generals shift in their seats, their sense a confused mixture of admiration for his courage and a primal, shivering fear of the consequences. They are watching a man walk onto a landmine. And for a split second, the professional world of ranks and regulations tries to assert itself once more. The Supreme Commander does not move. He does not turn his head to acknowledge the general's outburst, nor does he withdraw his hand from the back of your chair. Instead, he remains leaned over you, his presence a dark, looming shadow that swallows your terminal and your great uniform. The only change is a subtle shift in the air pressure, a sudden, heavy thickening of the atmosphere that makes the lungs feel like they are filled with lead. Then he releases a fraction of his dominance. It is not a shout, nor is it a physical strike. It is a low-frequency growl that starts deep in his massive chest, a sound so primal it seems to vibrate through the very floor plates of the Citadel. It is a rhythmic, guttural vibration that travels through the leather of your chair and directly into your spine, making your entire frame tremble with an instinctive, somatic terror. The effect on the room is instantaneous and absolute. The survival instinct of every alpha present, men who have led armies and ordered the destruction of worlds, is triggered with the force of a physical blow. General Vance's booming voice is cut off, as if his throat has been crushed. His face turns a sickly, pale gray, and his knees buckle, a frantic, rhythmic trembling taking over his limbs. He doesn't just stop talking, he recoils. He takes 3 stumbling steps backward, his eyes wide and glassy as his body forces him into a state of total, abject submission. Around the table, the other sector leads are suddenly looking at their laps, their spines curving, their sense turning into a sour, watery broadcast of defeat. They are no longer generals. They are prey, and the predator has just shown his teeth. You are left alone in the absolute center of his focus. The room has vanished, the people in it reduced to background noise that no longer matters. Your heart is hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird, a frantic, rhythmic thrumming that you are certain he can feel through the back of your chair. The air in the small space between you is hot, charged with the scent of his claim and the raw, sweet tang of your own inevitable surrender. You are a specialist, a woman of logic and data, but in this moment, your body is screaming a different truth. You can feel the weight of his authority, a physical pressure that makes your professional composure feel like a house of cards. The doors are still open, but you are already trapped. The briefing is a memory, and as the low-frequency vibration of his growl fades into a heavy, expectant silence, you realize the survival counter has hit 0. The invisible specialist has been caught, and the predator is finally ready to stop the world and take what is his. Your knees are weak, your mind is a blur of green code and ancient cedar, and as his shadow looms over you, the only thing you can feel is the absolute, unshakable certainty of his possession. The hunt is over. The silence that follows the commander's low-frequency growl is a heavy, suffocating blanket. It is the kind of silence that exists in the eye of a storm, where the world holds its breath in anticipation of the next strike. The generals are broken, their professional bravado replaced by a primal, rhythmic trembling that they cannot conceal. They are no longer soldiers. They are merely witnesses to a claiming they were never meant to see. The Supreme Commander straightens his massive frame, and the shift in air pressure is enough to make the room feel like it is expanding and contracting in time with his breathing. He does not look at the broken men around the table. He does not offer a dismissal or a final order. He simply nods once to his adjutant, a lean alpha who stands by the blast doors with the stoic neutrality of a machine. With a sharp, wordless gesture, the adjutant signals the end of the session. The briefing is dismissed. There is no choreographed exit, no orderly retreat. The sector leads scramble to gather their data tablets, their movements frantic and uncoordinated as they flee the room. They move with a desperate, rhythmic haste, their scents trailing behind them like a sour wake of defeat. General Vance is the first out, his head bowed, his once booming voice silenced by a terror he will likely never recover from. Within seconds, the heavy, rhythmic thud of their retreating footsteps fades into the distance, leaving the war room echoing with a hollow, metallic emptiness. You are left sitting in the shadows, your heart a frantic, rhythmic drum against your ribs. Your instinct for self-preservation, honed by years of playing the ghost, finally kicks in. You tell yourself that if you move now, if you blend in with the final stragglers of the support staff, you might still escape. You try to stand, your legs feeling like lead, your body heavy with the lingering weight of his proximity. You keep your eyes down, focusing on the cold, polished floor plates as you prepare to slide out of your station and vanish into the gray corridors of the Citadel. You are the invisible specialist. You are a ghost. Ghosts do not stay in rooms with predators. You reach for your data tablet, your fingers brushing against the cold glass, and you begin to push your chair back. But the predator is faster than the ghost. Before you can even clear the edge of the console, his hand moves. It shifts from the back of your chair to your shoulder, and the world suddenly stops. The weight of his palm is absolute. It is not a request. It is a physical tethering to the spot that makes the gravity of the room feel 10 times stronger. His grip is firm, a steady, unshakable pressure that radiates heat through your gray tunic and directly into your marrow. The sheer authority in that touch is enough to freeze the blood in your veins. You are pinned to the station, a butterfly caught under a heavy glass jar. Your breath hitches, a sharp, rhythmic gasp that sounds like a sob in the stillness of the room. The specialist stays, he announces. His voice is not a whisper now. It is a dark, resonant command that carries the weight of a planetary decree. It is a slow, rhythmic vibration that fills the empty room, bouncing off the metal walls and the holographic arrays. It is a statement of absolute possession that leaves no room for negotiation or rank. Behind you, the heavy blast doors begin to cycle shut. You hear the rhythmic, hydraulic hiss of the seals engaging, a sound that feels like the locking of a cage. The magnetic bolts engage with a final metallic thud that echoes through your chest. You are sealed in the vacuum of the war room. The invisible specialist has been caught, and the doors are locked. The professional world has been shut out, leaving only the shadow of the Supreme Commander and the raw, sweet scent of your own rising surrender. You are alone with the man who has been tracking you through the machine, and as his hand remains heavy on your shoulder, you realize the price of being found is everything you used to be. The hunt is over, and the master of the Citadel is finally ready to collect his prize. Your body knows the truth. Resistance is gone, leaving only the rhythmic, heavy intent of the man standing over you. The specialist stays, and the ghost is finally forced to become real. The silence of the empty war room is louder than the shouting of 1,000 men. It is a dense, pressurized quiet that rings in your ears, amplified by the low hum of the holographic maps that still glow with a ghostly blue light. Now that the generals are gone, the room feels impossibly vast, a cavern of cold metal and high-tech weaponry that has been reduced to a private stage for your undoing. You can hear the rhythmic thrum of your own pulse, a frantic, drum-like sound that seems to sync with the mechanical whirring of the ventilation system. You are a specialist, a woman who lives by the clock and the code, yet time has stretched into something unrecognizable. Every second feels like an eternity as you wait for the shadow behind you to move. The weight of his hand remains on your shoulder, a constant, burning reminder of your capture. Then, he begins to move. You hear the slow, rhythmic click of his boots as he walks around the side of your console. He moves with a deliberate, predatory grace, his massive frame cutting through the blue light until he is standing directly in front of you. He is so close that the toes of his polished boots nearly touch your own. You are forced to finally look up, your gaze traveling past the silver medals on his chest, past the sharp line of his jaw, and into eyes that hold absolutely no professional distance. They are dark, swirling with an intensity that makes your breath catch in your throat. This is not the Supreme Commander assessing a subordinate. This is a man looking at something he has hunted for a very long time. He reaches out, his hand moving with a slow, agonizing rhythm that makes your heart skip. His thumb drags across the line of your jaw, a touch that is both incredibly gentle and terrifyingly firm. The calloused skin of his thumb is a stark contrast to the softness of your own, a physical reminder of the power he wields. He is searching for the pulse point he already knows is racing, his touch lingering on the sensitive skin just below your ear. You can feel the heat of him radiating into your face, a flush of warmth that has nothing to do with the temperature of the room. Your body is trembling, a fine, rhythmic vibration that begins in your knees and travels all the way to your fingertips. But you are a professional. You try to cling to the wreckage of your identity, a desperate attempt to find a foothold in the shifting sand of this encounter. You swallow hard, your throat tight and dry, as you attempt to speak. You try to cite Regulation 402B, the protocol for private briefings, and the chain of command that technically protects your rank. You mention the urgency of the logistical data, trying to force your voice into a cold, rhythmic cadence that suggests you are still the invisible specialist. You tell him that this behavior is outside the scope of your assignment, that you are here to provide data, not a personal audience. You try to use words as a shield, a thin wall of professional jargon to keep the predator at bay. But can words stop a man who has already tasted the air? He doesn't listen to your citations. He doesn't care about the regulations that govern the lesser alphas. He simply watches your lips move, his gaze tracking the frantic movement of your throat as you struggle to maintain your composure. The more you talk, the more your professional wall crumbles. Your voice falters, the words becoming a jumbled, breathless mess as his thumb continues its slow, rhythmic exploration of your jawline. The heat of his presence is a physical sedative, a heavy weight that makes your logic feel like a distant, irrelevant memory. You realize with a jolt of pure, visceral panic that he isn't looking for a specialist. He is looking for the woman beneath the gray uniform, and he has already found her. The wall hasn't just been shattered, it has been dissolved by the sheer intensity of his focus. You are standing in the wreckage of your career, and as he leans in closer, the only thing left is the absolute certainty of your surrender. He lets out a sound that is half laugh, half growl, a dark, rhythmic vibration that rumbles through his chest and into your very bones. It is a sound of absolute confidence, the sound of a predator who knows the prey has run out of ground. He leans in closer, his massive frame caging you against the cold metal of the terminal, until the only thing you can see is the dark, swirling intensity of his eyes. The ozone in the air sharpens, a physical pressure that makes your lungs feel heavy and your head light. You are trapped between the machine you've served for years and the man who has come to dismantle your entire reality. The blue light of the holographic maps casts long, jagged shadows across his features, making him look like something carved from ancient, unforgiving stone. "A thin veil for a thick truth," he murmurs, his voice a low-frequency rasp that sends a fresh wave of heat through your frame. He isn't looking at your face now. His gaze has dropped to the pulse point, jumping frantically in your neck. He reaches out, his fingers hooking into the stiff, high collar of your gray specialist tunic. The leather of his gloves is cool, but the intent behind the movement is searing. With a slow, rhythmic pressure, he pulls the fabric aside, exposing the pale skin you've kept hidden beneath chemical blockers and regulation cloth. You feel the air-conditioned chill of the room hit your skin, followed immediately by the overwhelming heat of his proximity. He mocks the smell of your blockers, his lip curling in a way that is both predatory and possessive. To him, the expensive black market chemicals are nothing more than a nuisance, a pathetic attempt to deny the primal reality of what you are to him. He calls it a mask, a lie you've been telling the world, and himself, for far too long. His thumb brushes over the skin he's just bared, a slow, rhythmic movement that makes your knees tremble. You try to pull back, to find some shred of your professional distance, but there is nowhere to go. The console is hard against your spine, and the Supreme Commander is the only world left. Then he leans in. He doesn't kiss you. He doesn't strike. He simply lowers his head until his nose is pressed firmly into the crook of your neck. You freeze, your breath hitching in a sharp, rhythmic gasp as you feel the prickle of his stubble and the terrifying weight of his intent. He inhales deeply, a slow and deliberate drawing in of the air that feels like he is pulling your very soul out through your skin. You can feel the vibration of his nostrils against your pulse, a rhythmic pulse of heat that makes your mind go completely blank. The chemical mask you've worn like armor for your entire career begins to buckle under the sheer, concentrated force of his will. It happens all at once. The synthetic scent blockers, designed to withstand the heat of battle and the scrutiny of lesser alphas, finally snap. The chemical veil dissolves, shredded by the primal recognition of the man holding you. In its place, the rush of your true scent fills the small, pressurized space between your bodies. It is a sweet, heady broadcast of faded recognition, a scent of wild honey and rain-drenched earth that has been bottled up for years. It is the scent of a mate who has finally been found, and it hits the air with the force of a physical explosion. The commander groans, a deep, rhythmic sound of triumph that vibrates through your entire body. He drinks in the scent, his grip on your collar tightening as he claims the air you breathe. The invisible specialist is gone, burned away by the heat of this revelation. In her place is a woman whose body is finally telling the truth her mind tried to bury. Your knees weaken instinctively, the strength leaving your legs as your wolf stirs with a primal, desperate need to submit to the man looming over you. You are no longer a ghost in a gray uniform. You are a mate who can no longer deny the pull. The hunt hasn't just ended. The prize has been revealed. And as he nuzzles deeper into your neck, the only thing you can feel is the absolute, unshakable weight of his claim. The mask is dead, and your new life has just begun. The silence that follows the shattering of your scent blockers is heavy, a physical weight that settles over the war room like a falling curtain. The air is no longer sterile. It is thick with the sweet, heady musk of your surrender and the dark, ozone-sharp scent of his triumph. You are pinned between the cold, unyielding edge of the metal console and the massive, radiating heat of the Supreme Commander. He doesn't move away. Instead, he shifts his weight, caging you in with his arms until you are entirely surrounded by the dark fabric of his uniform and the absolute authority of his frame. You feel the cold metal of the terminal pressing into your stomach while his chest brushes against your back, creating a crushing, rhythmic pressure that makes it impossible to think of anything but the man who has just ended your life as a ghost. He leans in, his lips brushing the shell of your ear, as he begins to describe your future with a slow, rhythmic certainty. His voice is a low-frequency vibration that settles deep in your marrow, stripping away the last of your professional pretenses. He tells you that the days of back rooms and shadows are over. There will be no more gray uniforms to hide your shape, no more chemical veils to mask your truth, and no more being ignored by a world that didn't deserve to see you. He speaks of a life where you are the most visible woman in the Citadel, not because of your data, but because of the mark he intends to leave on your soul. It is a looming reality that feels both terrifying and strangely like a relief. For years, you have fought to be nothing, to be a void. But under the weight of his gaze, you realize how exhausting the invisibility has been. The moral tension of the moment rises in your throat, a sharp contrast to the primal heat in your belly. You are a specialist, a woman of high-ranking intellect and ironclad discipline. You should find this dominance offensive. You should be struggling against the physical cage he has built around you. Yet, as he presses closer, his heartbeat a steady, rhythmic thrum against your shoulder blades, you feel a traitorous surge of relief. There is a profound, dark comfort in being found by someone strong enough to hold you. Your mind tries to cite the ethics of professional boundaries, but your body only understands the way his hand rests on your neck, a firm reminder that your status means nothing to his primal instinct. You are caught in the middle of a conflict between your logic and your nature, and nature is winning with every breath you take. He shifts again, his hand moving from your neck to cup your chin, forcing you to look up at him. The intensity in his eyes is absolute, a dark storm that demands total honesty. He doesn't want your reports or your logistics anymore. He wants your submission. "Say my name," he demands, his voice a dark, resonant command that leaves no room for the titles you've used as a shield. He is stripping away the Supreme Commander for something much more intimate, something that binds you to him in a way that rank never could. He wants you to acknowledge the man beneath the medals, the predator who has claimed you in front of the entire sector. You hesitate, your breath coming in short, rhythmic gasps as you stare into the abyss of his focus. To utter his name is to finalize the contract, to admit that the invisible specialist is dead and that you belong to the master of the Citadel. The air between you is charged with the scent of ancient cedar and the raw, sweet tang of your own rising need. Your lips part, the sound of your own pulse deafening in the silence of the locked room. Can you actually say it? Can you utter the name of the man who has just dismantled your world? As he looms over you, his shadow a heavy blanket of possession, you realize that the answer was decided the moment he walked into the room. Resistance is a memory. Surrender is the only path left. You are his, and the weight of that truth is the only thing keeping you upright. The Supreme Commander does not move to mark you with his teeth, not yet. He is a master of the long game, a strategist who understands that the most profound victories are won through the total dissolution of the enemy's will. Instead of the sharp, sudden sting of a bite, he begins a slow, rhythmic friction that is infinitely more devastating to your remaining composure. He tilts your head back with a firm, unyielding pressure of his hand, exposing the long, vulnerable line of your throat to the blue, flickering light of the war room. Then, he leans down and begins to rub his jaw against yours. It is a primal, heavy gesture of scent marking, the rough texture of his skin dragging across yours in a deliberate, possessive rhythm that makes your entire frame vibrate with a low-frequency hum of recognition. He is painting you with his essence, replacing the chemical void of your life with the undeniable weight of his presence. Each pass of his jaw against yours is a steady, rhythmic stroke of authority, a physical branding that tells your nervous system exactly who owns the air you breathe. You can feel the vibration of his low voice deep in your own chest, a dark, resonant sound that acts as a physical sedative. It is a slow-motion claiming, a ritual of patience that turns your frantic panic into a heavy, warm submission. Your mind, which once thrived on the sharp edges of logistical data, is now a soft, blurred landscape where the only landmark is the scent of ancient cedar and the radiant heat of his skin. You are being claimed in the most absolute sense, not just as a mate, but as a permanent fixture of his reality. He speaks as he marks you, his voice a rhythmic rasp that settles over your senses like a heavy blanket. He explains, with a terrifyingly calm certainty, that the elites who stood in this room moments ago were never his concern. He didn't see their medals, their polished boots, or their desperate, flaring scents. He tells you that there was only ever room in his vision for the one who thought she could hide from him. He mocks the idea that a ghost could escape a hunter of his caliber. He describes how he watched you from the high monitors, how he tracked the subtle, rhythmic shifts in your data patterns, and how he waited for the specific moment when the pressure of the sector would force you into this room. He has been savoring the anticipation of this ritual for weeks, a slow burning intent that is finally reaching its climax in the silence of the locked war room. The realization that you were never invisible, that you were being curated and watched by the most powerful man in the Citadel, is the final blow to your professional identity. Therefore, the surrender is no longer a fear you are fighting. It has become a physical necessity, a craving that makes your limbs heavy and your pulse slow to a deep, rhythmic thrum. You find yourself leaning into the friction of his jaw, your neck arching instinctively to give him better access to the skin he is claiming. The gray uniform, the data tablets, and the cold metal of the console are all fading into the background, leaving only the primal reality of the man holding you. You are no longer a specialist waiting for the briefing to end. You are a woman waiting for the first command of her new life. The air in the room is still, a heavy vacuum that only the two of you occupy. The claiming ritual is nearly complete, the scent of his possessions so thick it feels like a physical garment wrapped around your shoulders. You are standing in the wreckage of your old world, but the heat of his presence is so overwhelming that you don't even care to look back. The invisible specialist has been discarded, and as he pulls back just enough to look into your eyes, you see the absolute, unshakable certainty of your future. The hunt has ended in a total, rhythmic victory, and as the master of the Citadel prepares to lead you out of the shadows, you realize that your surrender is the only power you have left. He releases your chin, but the weight of his presence does not diminish. Instead, it shifts into a new, terrifyingly efficient phase. The Supreme Commander reaches past you, his large hand dwarfing the interface of your specialist terminal. With a few slow, rhythmic taps of his fingers, he overrides your security clearance. You watch, breathless, as the green lines of code you spent years perfecting are systematically purged. He is not just closing a file, he is deleting a person. Your specialist profile, your service record, and your carefully maintained ghost identity vanish into the digital ether. In their place, a new protocol emerges, a high-level security clearance that exists outside the standard military hierarchy. It is a digital tether that only he can access, a private channel that binds your professional utility exclusively to his person. The invisible specialist is officially dead, and the new protocol is absolute. He turns toward you, his eyes dark with the satisfaction of a strategist who has just secured his most valuable asset. He doesn't ask if you are ready. He doesn't inquire about your transition. He simply reaches out and places his hand on the back of your neck. The grip is firm, a heavy and unshakable signal of absolute possession that radiates a low-frequency heat through your entire frame. It is a public signal of ownership, a physical mark that tells the world you are no longer a functionary of the Citadel, but a permanent extension of his will. He begins to lead you toward the heavy blast doors, his pace slow and rhythmic, forcing you to match his stride. As the doors cycle open, the pressurized air of the war room rushes out into the corridor. You expect to feel the cold chill of the gray hallways, but you only feel him. You are walking through the heart of the Citadel, the most visible woman in the sector, and yet you have never felt more secluded. The corridors are lined with soldiers and staff, people who once looked through you as if you were made of glass. Now they stop. They press themselves against the walls, their spines snapping to attention as the Supreme Commander passes. But their eyes are not on his medals today. They are on you. They see the way his hand is buried in the hair at the nape of your neck. They smell the heavy, sweet scent of his claim that now clings to your gray tunic like a second skin. You feel the weight of their collective shock, a rhythmic wave of disbelief that follows you through the halls. You are no longer the ghost. You are the singularity. Every step toward his private quarters is a step further away from the life you knew. The realization hits you with a sharp, survival tension refresher. Your old life is not just over. It has been consumed. You are now entirely at the mercy of the man whose hand is currently guiding your every movement. You are being relocated, not as a promotion, but as a prize. The professional world of data and logistics has been replaced by the primal world of his quarters, a space where the only code that matters is his command. Is this the end of your career, or the beginning of your true power? As you reach the threshold of the executive wing, the air changes. It becomes quieter, more personal, and heavy with the scent of ancient cedar that dominates his private sanctum. You realize that you will never return to the back row. You will never again hide behind a chemical veil or a gray uniform. You are the commander's specialist now, a woman whose data is for his eyes only, and whose loyalty is anchored by the rhythmic thrum of his pulse. The hunt has brought you to the very center of the sector's power, and as the doors to his private quarters hiss shut behind you, you realize that being found was the most dangerous thing you ever did. You stand at the threshold of his private sanctum, the professional world a distant memory. The scent of his claim is the only air you want to breathe now. Was the mask ever for your protection, or was it just a challenge he couldn't wait to break? If you are ready to be found, follow the scent and subscribe. The hunt is just beginning.